Clemson University exposed. This unconstitutionally governed institution of higher learning is reaping a whirlwind of its own lies and deception. Also, a state trooper whose case tugged at heartstrings has now become a cause of revulsion. I'm Will Folks, the owner and founding editor of FITSNews.com. Welcome to another edition of your Week in Review. So if you followed FITSNews.com for any period of time, you know that we have long supported privatizing higher education in South Carolina. Doesn't matter what your ideology is, whether you're embracing wokeness or hating wokeness, higher ed is simply not a core function of government, at least not the way it's done in South Carolina. Yet these institutions of higher learning, including Clemson, the University of South Carolina, Medical University of South Carolina, they wield enormous power over the South Carolina political class, the political establishment, and as a result, they are allowed to engage in all sorts of crony capitalist, market distortion, economic development intervention, things that, again, taxpayers really don't have any business funding when you look at the condition of our schools, of our roads, the things government should fund. But at any rate, these institutions thrive in a culture of secrecy, in backroom deals and shady relationships where people say one thing behind closed doors and yet tell another story to the public. Well, this month and in preceding months, that myth has been shattered and that double standard has been exposed for everyone to see, thanks in large part to the work of an upstate county councilman who was presented with one of these secret backroom deals and said, you know what? That is not in the best interest of my citizens. We're referring, of course, to Matthew Durham, the chairman of the Okone County Council, who was bullied, harassed, and according to him, threatened by one of the powerful developers linked to Clemson University over a massive multi-use development that was planned for Okone County. Well, Durham blew the whistle and has exposed Clemson for this double standard. I'm joined now by our research director, Jen Wood. Jen, you have been digging into this from the beginning. We were already focused on Clemson's budget, on issues that the school was having with its budget. We were focused on the fact that it's governed unconstitutionally, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But then you stumbled onto this Matthew Durham thing, and it has been, I think it's one of the biggest stories we've covered this year.
It's fascinating. And I didn't even stumble on it. It was sent to us by many people. Like, you've got to check this out. And they're right. I mean, this Matthew Durham is the kind of leader that I hope most small counties get, because he is really doing what's best and digging into what is happening and what is being sent to them and who's behind it.
So, Jen, exactly what is it that happened with this development?
So United Homes Group, a large home builder in South Carolina and actually in the surrounding states, had gone to Okone County asking for some zoning changes because they proposed a 5,000 home development in Okone County. This is, this would have doubled, would have basically doubled the population of that area. It was called the New Redevelopment. And, based on what they're asking, Matthew Durham just started digging into it. And when there was pushback from the county council, the developer and its executives started throwing threats at them. If you don't approve this, we are going to launch a publicity campaign and make it happen.
One of these developers, by the way, is the guy who was at the heart of the botched Carolina Panthers deal up in York County, where Governor Henry McMaster and state legislators blew millions, tens of millions of South Carolina tax dollars for the Carolina Panthers to bring their practice facility and team headquarters to Rock Hill. They pulled the plug and went to Charlotte instead and left us holding the bag. Taxpayers on the bag. This is the same guy.
Yep. Now, another key point to this is not only is this Mark Hart involved in it, on UHG's board sat Clemson trustee Nikki Haley and Clemson president James Clements. So these two individuals are on the board of a company proposing a massive expansion into the county adjacent to Clemson. Just for Durham, once he found that out, it just did not pass the smell test for him.
But when he exposed them for that and for these connections, and it's not just the president of Clemson, James Clements, and Nikki Haley sitting on the board, but a major Clemson donor is the CEO of that company.
Correct.
Neary, Michael Neary.
Yep.
Is that correct? So you've got a Clemson donor, you've got the president of the school, you've got their most celebrated, recognized trustee all mixed up in this thing. But Clemson's response was, oh, we got nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with it.
No connections to it.
No, nothing. That was their public response.
They called it misinformation. They accused him of spreading misinformation, didn't they?
Right. So after this started becoming public, UHG's entire board resigned. Their stock tanked. I mean, just one man publicizing all of this information, and I thought that was absolutely fascinating. But yeah, that's they denied
Rats
it.
scurrying from the ship.
Right. And then Matthew Durham started deploying FOIAs, Freedom of Information requests, to Clemson. And he received back a large number of emails from Clemson officials to UHG executives regarding this development.
Which showed that all their previous claims were full of it.
I mean,
lies.
they were lying. It is absolutely insane.
And they've got the school's top lobbyist, Angie Leidinger, I believe, is on one of those emails describing clear coordination between the company and school officials.
Yeah,
noting that Clemson's president is on the board.
Correct. Noting he's on the board and is aware of it, but would not be participating in the meetings.
And this is the person that goes before the legislature representing the school. Yep. Word is bond is the rule at the State House. Your word is supposed to be bond, but this, I mean, they got caught with their pants down, didn't they?
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Jen, let me dig into this aspect of the story, because one of the things that troubles me when we look at the influence of money, of politics, of pressure, you've got clear restrictions in Okone County that prohibited this kind of development.
And in fact, for good reason. They don't have the infrastructure for it.
And that's what they were trying to get around. That's what those threats of a public campaign and basically telling them we're gonna basically expose you, Okone County, and get you guys kicked out for resisting us. He turned the tables on him, Matthew Durham, didn't he?
He sure did. And, you know, just yesterday, he put a Facebook post out with an email noting how when they were taking a trip to Purdue University in Indiana, Clemson officials and UHG officials, to look at a similar development, they were planning on bringing Clemson swag with them. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. It's right around that time Clemson landed a big Purdue player from the transfer portal. I'm not insinuating anything. I'm still a little red ass that South Carolina got their butts kicked by Clemson in the annual rivalry. But let's look at this as a case study, Jen. You mentioned it earlier that Durham is exactly the kind of guy that we want to be elected at the local level to truly represent the interest of his people. Here's the problem, though, with that. He's 1 in a million in this state. He is the exception to the rule. The rule is people who roll over for these powerful people.
And hide things on their behalf.
So, Jen, this is a guy who not only picked up these 3 stones and put them in his slingshot, hurled them, and literally sunk them in the head of the institutional giant, but this is a guy who did it against all this political pressure that, again, 100 times out of 100 in South Carolina, people just fold.
Right.
They fold.
It's been actually really enlightening to watch, because I've been covering, on the other end of the state, Hampton County's county council, who I can't get to respond to FOIAs, who consistently hide things from the public, from the citizens. So he's just putting it out there. He just dropped every email in a Dropbox file for people to read on their own.
Well, Jen, I do now want to talk a little about Clemson in a broader sense, because they've obviously got caught with their pants down in this situation. But we got bigger issues at Clemson. We reported back in the spring that the school was having serious issues with their budget, with their spending, and that they weren't being completely honest about those issues. Back to that issue we talked about earlier, the fundamental trust issue with these people that are talking to lawmakers. But they've also got a bigger issue as it relates to how the school is governed. And you mentioned Nikki Haley earlier. Nikki Haley is one of 7 Clemson trustees who is appointed for life and who gets to choose their successor. That's 7 trustees out of a 13-member board. In case you were educated in a South Carolina government-run school, that's a majority, 7 out of 13. But Jen, there's one problem with that arrangement. The state constitution forbids lifetime appointments at state institutions.
That's right. And it's funny because when you first started like telling me about that, you were, just were going off on it. I'm like, what is the big deal, for crying out loud? But this is why it's a big deal.
It's in the Constitution.
You can't, what's in the Constitution, and you can't hold these individuals accountable for things like this. She's there for the rest of her life.
Yeah. Along with 6 of her colleagues.
Right.
But Nikki Haley is no longer on the UHF or UHG board, nor is James Clements. They resigned their positions on the board as a result, quite frankly, of Matthew Durham exposing this and you reporting on it. Because let's be honest, had you not reported on this, this would have just been another one of these scandals that bubbles up, no one hears about and does anything about. So they've resigned from the board. But Jen, at some point, we've got to do something about this governance structure. And there is a group in Columbia, and I want to send a quick shout out, the South Carolina Public Interest Foundation. It was founded by Ned Sloan, a government gadfly, and he used to love it when we called him that. He loved being called, it was Socrates. They call Socrates a gadfly. Ned Sloan, man, he loved being called the gadfly. But this was a guy who formed this group, and their sole purpose is to take state governments, local governments, whoever, to court when they're violating the Constitution or breaking their own laws. And South Carolina lawmakers, listen up. You got mad at Clemson earlier this year over the wokeness stuff. Who really cares at the end of the day? You're upset with them for not shooting you straight about the budget. Do something about it. Do something about it. Now you see they got caught lying, bald-faced lying to people about this cozy economic development deal. Do something about it, state lawmakers, Governor Henry McMaster. Do something about it for once. Show the same kind of courage that the local leaders up in Okone County, led by Matthew Durham, have shown. Prove that kind of courage in the face of such huge institutional opposition is not the exception in South Carolina. Make it the rule. Earlier this year, South Carolinians were moved by the plight of State Trooper Wayne LaBounty, injured in a vehicle strike on the side of a road in Lexington County, South Carolina. But that story has shifted gears in a big way in recent weeks. I'm joined by our lead investigative reporter, Andy Fancher. Andy, this Wayne LaBounty story went from mass support for this individual to something completely different. Why don't you walk us through the saga of Wayne LaBounty? What happened? Where are we now? And what do we expect moving forward?
Yeah, so the saga of Wayne LaBounty is not for the faint of heart. We're looking at almost a Greek tragedy here. We're talking about a 63-year-old gentleman with approximately 40 years of law enforcement experience under his very big belt. And as you noted, in September of this year, he was struck by a pickup while effectuating a traffic stop right here in Lexington County. He later sued the Lexington County Sheriff's Department, accusing them specifically of negligence, a deputy purportedly failing to light up his vehicle, which supposedly, according to LaBounty's attorneys with the Going Law firm, triggered a chain reaction that resulted in him being hospitalized for approximately 6 weeks. And because of that collision and subsequent injury, it brought us to this incident that occurred last month, where he was receiving care from an at-home caregiver, so to speak. And that
Wait, but before you get into that, this guy was like people were hailing him. They were like wanting to support his recovery. I mean, this was a story that, like you said, it was pulling at people's heartstrings. People were really feeling for this guy.
We're talking statewide headlines. We're talking a fundraiser from Serve and Connect that raised some $50,000, I believe. Nonstop social media support. Continuous
it was a feel-good story.
Pumping. Sure. I mean, this beloved guy was receiving letters from elementary school students. Those videos are still posted to DPS's Facebook page. Again, just this wonderful all-around great story.
It was an outpouring.
Well, then something else poured out of his home, purportedly on or about late November. That is when one of his at-home caregivers reports to the Lexington County Sheriff's Department, the same sheriff's department that Wayne was suing for negligence, accusing this individual, Wayne LaBounty, of attempting to rape her while administering some at-home care. And that's where we're at right now.
And these are some graphic details too. This police report that you obtained, Andy,
We obtained
jarring details. What were some of the statements attributed to Trooper LaBounty?
Sure. In the details of the incident report that we exclusively published prior to Post and Courier or Fox Carolina or anybody else, we noted that he, according to the at-home caregiver, was administering a massage on his legs, which was part of her duties, when he supposedly leaned up and said, I want to F you, and it only goes
A regular
downhill
Romeo, allegedly.
from there. Oh, he's a smooth talker. It only
police
goes
report.
downhill from here. What's that?
Per the police report.
Per the police report. As a matter of fact, this is anecdotal, but a viewer, after we published this incident, had sent us some receipts indicating that prior to this incident, he had actually joined some Facebook pages, including Hot Sexy Ladies, Single Women Looking for Husband. That was in the spring of this year, which there's nothing criminal about that, except that the hot, sexy ladies were neither hot nor sexy. We did our own fact checking. But nonetheless, he is
You're
accused.
diligent, Andy. I love it.
We got to be. Got it. No stone left unturned. So he supposedly reels this caregiver into his bedroom, which is where the caregiver claims that when she walked into the doorway, he was standing naked, quote, exposing his penis, or with his penis exposed to her. And from there, she claims that he pinned her against the wall, said, I want to F you real hard. I've never had sex with a black girl before.
What?
Do black guys eat? You can fill in the blanks. Can I eat your...
Oh, my God.
The imagination, fill that void.
Now, we've heard from some in the law enforcement community that he's under the influence of some pain meds or something, but your Facebook search would seem to indicate maybe this wasn't something that was drug-induced, that maybe this was
the
an itch he
Facebook
was...
search indicates he's perhaps on the prowl,
Right.
Joining these groups, which is there's nothing criminal about.
True.
And I will note that since we published that report, law enforcement sources have reached out to me, noting wonderful things about this man, that this
Right.
is just totally off the reservation for Wayne LaBounty.
Out of character is what they've said.
And so, there have been some speculation that maybe some form of drug or opioids were involved here, or perhaps this crash that resulted in him being hospitalized for approximately 6 weeks did something up here. So there is no way to tell, and ultimately it will land on SLED to determine whether this rises to a level of criminal charge or prosecution.
And credit Lexington for referring it. Obviously, he's suing them, so any investigation they conducted, people could say, well, there's questions there.
Right.
Because he's a trooper. He's not a Lexington County Sheriff's deputy, but he did sue them, so I think them referring it was the right thing to do.
Even if he hadn't sued Lexington County, I mean, him just living and working within that jurisdiction, I would hope that any rational agency would refer it out to SLED, although we have seen example time and time again of departments not doing that, investigating themselves and finding no wrongdoing.
And we've seen examples of SLED not doing its job on some of these referrals.
What? SLED? Never. Well, I think I would have heard about that.
I think you have heard about that.
I'm messing.
I think you published numerous stories about that. But
unfortunately.
Well, speaking of some of those, and let's talk about that a little bit, Andy, because you have done amazing work this year on Badges Gone Bad. I mean, everybody knows about the Chuck Wright saga and your reporting, which I believe is what led to his downfall this year. But that's just one of the Badges Gone Bad that has been, scalps on the wall, so to speak, for you, man.
Right.
But in a lot of these cases, SLED is involved. This is obviously one of them that's got a SLED component. But Kind of walk us through some of the other ones that you've been working on. Tell us a little bit about what stages they're in
Sure.
on the Badge Gone Bad front.
Yeah, as we near the end of the year, I just kind of took a step back and looked at some of the high points from 2025. And in fact, there was a Badge Gone Bad just this week. Just yesterday, we published a report on an individual. In fact, I want to give you a little test here.
Okay, yeah.
So this is out of the Mullins Police Department. We have
Mullins, okay.
a gentleman who can't even spell his own name right. It's Chris Ginn. Instead of Chris, it's Chris Ginn. So I want you to guess out of this lineup who SLED is accusing of selling their police department iPhone to a Walmart kiosk.
You know, I'm wanting to go with the big guy. Maybe he needs to get the money for some Ozempic. Maybe I don't want to racially stereotype. Are we going to go? Is it the short white guy on the far side?
You are playing this very carefully, and I respect it. Unfortunately, it is the gentleman in the middle.
Okay.
According to agents with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, Mr. Crisgin Gauze, a 24-year-old out of Mullins, which is in Marion County, did exactly what I said. It's a headline that speaks for itself. He purportedly took his police department iPhone into a Walmart and sold it at one of those kiosks for $140, which was about 18 times less than the price of the bond that he posted this week, his second such arrest in this scandalous embezzlement case.
$140. Just threw his career away for $140?
Now, this is just a sidebar, though. I mean, this is just an allegedly just stupid idiot cop who clearly had no reason to ever be in a uniform. But after that, I did a cursory search, and that's when I found that he was approximately the 25th law enforcement officer in the state of South Carolina to face criminal charges, to not only fall under a SLED investigation, but to face criminal charges in the year 2025.
That's just what we know of.
Well, those are just the ones that SLED was able to charge.
Oh, wow.
Because as we have emphasized, there have been declination letters just this winter. A declination letter issued for the fair-haired sheriff of the upstate, Chuck Wright. Even though 10th Circuit Solicitor Micah Black noted that there was overwhelming evidence in that case, he declined to prosecute for no apparent reason, no presidential pardon pending, I imagine. Then we have Alan Wilson's office, the office of the Attorney General himself, declining to prosecute former South Congaree Police Chief Stephen Jonas. So the 25 charges, the 25 individuals, those again are just the ones that even make it to getting charged.
Yeah.
And I want to emphasize too how difficult it is to even fall under a SLED investigation as a cop in South Carolina. Now I know individuals like former Greenville Lieutenant Daryl J. Kicklighter might disagree, but on the whole, it is quite complicated because first, a department has to open themselves up to scrutiny and say, investigate this person because we believe there's misconduct.
Yeah. Which reflects poorly on them. Yeah.
Well, and guess how often that happens? Well,
not often.
There were only 25 arrests this year. So there's the emphasis. But by God's grace, as I talk more and more about the epidemic of corrupt law enforcement in this state, good officers do reach out. And with their help, we are able to identify other cops who are under SLED investigation because SLED is not going to publicize that, hey, we're investigating this guy and this guy and this guy. You got to reach out and ask.
Well, that's what it struck me about your Chuck Wright coverage was not only this failure of the state to charge, given the Fed, their argument is, oh, the feds have done it. But as you point out, Chuck Wright is a prime candidate for a presidential pardon. So the fact that there are now no state charges is significant.
Paves the way.
Paves the way. But the other part of that story that I found fascinating was, and people sometimes give, when they talk to you, Andy, they say, oh, well, Andy doesn't like cops or Andy's too hard on cops. But what I thought was great about that Spartanburg story was it was cops standing up and doing the right thing that broke that story wide open. And the part of our show, I can't remember how long ago it was, a couple weeks ago, but you singled those folks out, many of them anonymous. You singled them out and praised them for having the courage to stand up and do this because far too often, it's like we were talking about in the segment with Jen with the local county official, far too often people are afraid to go against these institutions. So those cops, I mean, Badges Gone courageous. Props to them.
I will stop at nothing to commend the men and women within and around Spartanburg who made that coverage of Chuck Wright happen, we can pretty much attribute that entire unraveling to officers familiar with Chuck Wright himself. And you're right, talk about badges gone courageous, because when you see the highest authority of a county, whether it's Spartanburg or anywhere else, purportedly committing felonies, who do you go to?
Yeah.
Do you go to the PD? Do you go to the solicitor's office that has enabled this purported behavior for so long? Do you go to the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, which actually we have obtained receipts indicating that some people have, and that SLED not only dropped the ball, they just kicked the ball out of their court entirely as early as 2018. So, when you have all of these institutions that would rather stand beside, again, this supposed constitutional Christian sheriff beloved by all, you don't really have a leg to stand on. So I guess for that reason, on top of the fact that they know that we dig, we had just a plethora of people reaching out and still reaching out. I mean, when I tell you that investigating Spartanburg specifically is like standing in quicksand, just when you think it can't get any deeper, oh, now I've sank, head deep. So I commend the gentlemen and ladies that have made it happen and continue to happen. We're not going anywhere in Spartanburg. We're just getting started.
And not only is he not kidding around about that, Andy Fancher and our research director, Jen Wood, have been working overtime over the last few weeks on several key leads coming out of Spartanburg County. Andy, I'm not going to spoil anything, but can you just give a little taste of what's to come?
Since Sheriff Chuck Wright pled guilty to 3, I hate to call them surface level federal charges, but since pleading guilty to that and saying, I'm pleading guilty because I am guilty, ... to what the feds found, which appears to be just the bare minimum. I mean, when I tell you that just about every law enforcement officer I talk to out Spartanburg way say that the feds left every stone turned or unturned, it's no joke. In fact, I'm seeing more and more people reaching out because of how pissed they are that this is all the feds somehow found. So since Chuck Wright resigned, we have not only continuously located names and businesses associated with this alleged illegal gambling network. I mean, we have found a literal castle in the upstate that appears to have been financed with less than toward dollars, just like Chuck's first campaign, allegedly. We have.
Why did they leave all this meat on the bone, Andy? Why did the feds leave all this meat on the bone?
It makes you wonder.
It does.
I mean, I can't help but question why. And the deputies helping us out, the civilians that have come forward with prior knowledge of these very intricate and ingrained networks, they all wonder the same thing. We have located additional personnel. We have identified additional personnel that have no reason to be in law enforcement. We have just as of recently located or identified as well a newly minted fugitive who at one point in time was in Wright's orbit. As to what this gentleman with mansions, plural, and Lamborghinis, plural, actually does for a living, neither Jen Wood nor myself could really tell you, except that there is a web of websites and LLCs and superimposed images, and to think that this gentleman is actually photographed with SCSO deputies, it makes you wonder, what in the hell is going on in Spartanburg?
Well, and don't tease too much, because that gentleman has been photographed with a lot of other people. And
presidents, plural.
And folks, this is just one of the threads that Andy and Jen Wood have been pulling in the aftermath of this investigation. Andy, I can't thank you enough, man. This is the epitomization of what we do. It is the essence of what this website is about, is when institutions fail to deliver the accountability that they were created to administer. When there's a gap there, when there's a failing there, you are stepping in a way that is just holding these folks accountable. Not only the people who are breaking the rules, the dirty cops, the corrupt law enforcement leaders, but the institutions that are failing to do their job of putting those folks in check. Andy, I can't thank you enough. All right, everybody, that's a wrap for this week's edition. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Also, I truly want to thank everyone who tuned in last week for the Month in Review, the show where we do it live. We're continuing to advance that format, loving the response we're getting from our audience. Also, on that front, be on the lookout at the end of this month for the FITSNews Year in Review, where we're going to recap the biggest stories of 2025. Don't miss that episode, folks. Coming up live at the end of this month. More details on that to come. But until next time, signing off for this edition of your Week in Review.